Hey, this is Waylon from Swiftwood Bows. Welcome to part 8. So before I go any further with the tillering, I feel like I want to get the handle shaped pretty much to its final form. Um, I wouldn't say it's completely necessary, but I think that I like knowing what my handle and fades are going to look like as I approach the final tillering, because I don't want to get my tiller just right, um, and get out to full draw and then take a bunch of wood off in here and inadvertently change the tiller. So I feel like this is a good time, as I'm about 6 inches from full draw, to come in here and finish shaping up the handle and the fades. Um, Aside from keeping a good fade transition, um, there's not a lot of firm rules about what to do with your handle. It's mostly about what feels comfortable to you. So this handle style that I'm doing it's kind of a slightly bulbous handle. It's not going to be particularly deep like a Howard Hill style handle. It's going to be, I really want to feel like I can dominate it with my hand, that it feels comfortable. I'm going to put an arrow rest. I'm going to glue on an arrow rest to the side later. I don't do cut-in shelves on my bows. I know some people like that style, but I feel like it doesn't really fit very well on a self bow aesthetically for me. Um, so I'm just going to be working this down, probably mostly with this microplane and maybe this little half round, just to kind of get the shape that I want and make sure that I've got smooth, consistent fades, so that I can start working as I finish the tillering. A lot of what I'm doing is making sure that I've got the bend coming into the fades as far as I want it to go. I don't want this area to be too stiff, but I don't want it bending too much into the handle either for this bow. So that's part of what I'm thinking about right now, is how thick my fades are and how they transition into the handle. One thing that I keep in mind as I'm working on the handle is I try not to get one area. I try not to focus too much on one area all at once and get it all the way down to where I think it needs to be and then switch to another area. I tend to work a little bit here and a little bit there. I take it out and I turn it around and look at it a lot. I feel it with my hand. I look at it from different angles. That way I can kind of have the whole thing come into shape together. And another important thing to keep in mind when you're working on the handle is that you need to leave a strip of undamaged back here. It doesn't have to be super wide. I bring it in pretty narrow, but I don't want to violate the integrity of the back completely. So I'll work on this for a little while. I might not show the whole process just to spare you the boredom, but I'll give you an idea of what I do. So to do the bulbous style, I kind of work it more in this area where the handle ends and the fade starts. I kind of get that down pretty narrow, and I leave it a little thicker here in the middle of the handle. It doesn't have to be much thicker, but just a little bit to provide that grip. You can see the bulbous shape starting to take form a little bit more there. Like I said, I kind of get to it gradually. My fades are still pretty thick here. I've got, I think, quite a bit that I can take off in here and still not affect the tiller too much. I don't think it's doing a lot of bending starting about here, heading into the handle. Working on your fades can be a little bit tricky. A little bit of change here will affect the strength and the bend of the bow quite a bit, because there's so much of the leverage happening here. And if you don't get your kind of inner portion of the bow working enough, you can run into stacking issues with your string angle. And if you get it bending too much in the handle, you can end up with a less efficient bow, and you can get a lot more hand shock as well. So it's a balancing act. You want the bend to be creeping in just the right amount, and it takes some experience, I think, to be able to judge what's too much or not enough. But just be mindful of that as you're working on it. Don't go crazy here. Don't get it super thin, but you also don't want it to be completely immobile here when the bow's bending. This is usually the last part of the bow that I tiller and bring the bend into. So I've got to be careful here. It's not super thick on this side, but with this knot over here, it's pretty thick. I think I can take some down out of here, but I have to make sure that I'm not just taking it down evenly, or I'm going to make it too thin over here. Alright, it's not perfect yet, but I think it's a lot closer to what it's going to be like as a finished handle. Might get it a little bit smaller, and I'll probably need to refine the fades a little bit more as I finish my tillering, but I think I got them closer to where they need to be. They're not quite so monstrous. I think I'm going to string it back up and take a look at the tiller, make sure that the work that I did didn't throw anything off. I still have plenty of weight left to work with. So I'll string it up, check the weight, and decide what I need to do next. Probably some more weight reduction. Wanted to show you the progress on the tiller. So after I shaped the handle, I checked the tiller and it looked good. And I took about 100 scrapes off of each limb. And so now we are at 60 pounds at 24 inches. And overall shape of the bow is still looking pretty good. So now I'm only about 4 inches from full draw. I think I'm going to take probably another 100 scrapes off and just keep creeping up those last few inches. I'll probably stop when I get to about 60 pounds at 27 inches. I'm going to probably shoot the bow in and see how it's shooting, and then look at refining the tips and any little last tweaks to the handle, and then I'll do some sanding, and we'll see if all of that kind of brings me into 60 pounds at 28 inches, and if it doesn't, I can do a few more scrapes on the belly to bring it in. But I like to shoot in the bow a little bit, because sometimes you lose just a little bit of poundage with its first 100 arrows or so. So I'm going to get it back on the shaving horse, take some more scrapes off, and I will check back in with you when I put it back up on the tillering tree. So I've taken some more scrapes off, probably about 100 on each side, and I did another probably 50 or 60 scrapes on the top limb because I was losing a little bit of my positive tiller, and that amount of scraping brought me back to where I wanted to be. The bottom limb was bending just a little bit too much for my liking. So I've got the bow out to 26 inches now. At 60 pounds. The tiller's still looking pretty good. You can see the top limb is on the right. It's bending a little bit more than the bottom limb, which is what I want with this asymmetrical design. So we're almost there. I think I'm going to do a little bit more scraping and see if I can get it out to 27, and then I think I will shoot some arrows through it. Alright, I've got the bow out to 60 pounds at 27 inches, and I wanted to shoot it a little bit before I brought it out to exactly, hopefully, what I want it to be at. The tiller's looking good. So this is a good time to point out that the tillering tree is a useful tool for observing the tiller, but really the best way to see a tiller of a bow is to actually see it drawn in the hand. So I'm going to draw it here for you before I shoot it, just so you can see what it looks like. Stand this way. Now, sorry, I got to turn my back to you. I'm a lefty. All right, this is the maiden shot. Pretty good. Hits hard. Shoots it in the right direction. Feels pretty good. It's got a little bit of hand shock, but I think that's mostly due to the bulky tips. I'm going to be refining these quite a bit. There's more mass out here than there needs to be, and that shouldn't affect the tiller at all to reduce that down a fair bit out here, and I think that's going to get rid of that hand shock. Plus these arrows are a little bit light for this weight of bow. They're probably more around 540 grains, and this bow is a little heavier than that. Let me try a couple different arrows, see if some of them shoot better than others. Well, I'll call that a success. I'm gonna shoot some more arrows through it, get a feel for it, take a look at the tiller while I'm drawing it in hand, and make sure I don't see anything that I don't like that I wasn't seeing when it was up on the tillering tree. And then after I've shot it in a bit, I'm going to check the weight again, see if I need to take a little bit more off to hone it in at 28 inches. And then I think the next step will be refining the tips, putting on the overlays, and getting started with the finish work. But I think we can officially call this guy a bow. Pretty exciting.